Hello, this is Diana Salcedo. This presentation covers translanguaging with language experience approach, page 127 to 131 of the Translanguaging Guide. The authors, Celic and Seltzer, show that using translanguaging strategies with language experience approach help emerging bilingual learner students to develop their ability to correctly use standard English grammar, spelling, capitalization, punctuation, and vocabulary. To understand this strategy, I am going to explain each concept individually. Let's start with translanguaging. According to Dr. Garcia, she states translanguaging refers to the language practices of bilingual people. In other words, translanguaging is the ability to speak both languages without making differences. So now let's analyze and refresh the concept of language experience approach. The language experience approach integrates speaking and listening, reading and writing through developing a written test based on first-hand experiences. This is very important. With this in mind, we can start developing this strategy for Celic and Seltzer, translanguaging with language experience approach. My definition: this strategy uses the translanguaging method to support the students in developing language for academic success, built through first-hand experiences. The question is, how can we implement this strategy with emerging bilingual learning students in elementary school? Celic and Seltzer provide us with 3 different ways to implement this strategy with our students. The first is to set up opportunities for students to draw on their home languages as well as English to tell you their experiences. The authors explained that when we add translanguaging to the language experience approach, we must think flexibly about how students use their languages to discuss their experiences. We can do this by encouraging students use their entire linguistic repertoire, using your multilingual students as experts. This is one of my favorites. So I'm going to show you my example. For my artifact, I am going to use Spanish. In this case, I speak Spanish, but if you don't, Celic and Seltzer encourage us to ask another student to translate for us, or we can use Google Translate or other internet resources. This is a picture of the activity. This activity is for social studies in first grade. The students are learning how they can be good citizens, cómo pueden ser buenos ciudadanos. According to the strategy, my objective is to encourage my students to use their language, drawing on their home languages when speaking in English. The question for this activity is, have you ever had an experience where you demonstrated to be a good citizen? ¿Alguna vez has tenido una experiencia donde demostraste ser un buen ciudadano? Here, I encourage my students to use their entire linguistic repertoire. I can write the answers on the board. So imagine this is the board, so I am writing the answers here. So again, if I don't know my students' languages, I can use Google Translate or other internet resources, or we can ask other students who share that home language for help. We can also let our students write the answers on the board. They love it. Every student will have the opportunity to participate. Now let's see the second way we can implement this strategy with our students in elementary school, according to Celic and Seltzer. Strategically partner students so that they can use the language experience approach together. Celic and Seltzer explain having students partner and take on the role of both storytellers and scribes, helping their reading, writing, and listening skills in both English and their home languages. So we can pair students in different ways depending on our teaching goals, of course. For example, I am following Celic and Seltzer suggestions, right? So in this example, I am pairing students who share a home language. So in this case, Alexa Salguero and William David, they speak Spanish. So knowing our students' proficiencies, we can make a preliminary list, as you observed in my example. This is the first group, this is the second group, this is the third group. Continuing with the same activity, we can pair up our students. This time they will have to write a paragraph about how they can be good citizens in the school. But first they will develop a brainstorm as you observe in the worksheet. Then they will use those ideas to develop their work. So they can write in Spanish and then in English. So here are some ideas and they can make the connections and write the paragraphs. So now let's see the third way to implement this strategy. Strategically use students' stories as translanguaging tools. Celic and Seltzer explain how teachers use the strategy to teach skills like grammar, word choice, and transitions. As teachers of EBLs, you can use this strategy to help students develop their writing in both English and their home languages. We can do this in 3 different ways. You can observe here. So let's see the first one. Explicitly teaching the similarities and differences between English and students' home languages. So you can teach linguistic awareness by drawing students' attention to similarities and differences between English and their home languages. You can focus on the following: word use and vocabulary, script, syntax, and word order. For my example, I am going to use cognates. Cognados son palabras que parecen similares y que significan lo mismo. Cognates are words that look and sound similar across different languages. So we can have our students work in more than 2 groups and write the cognates they know. We have to model the activity, of course. We can provide the 2 first examples, like, for example, here. And they can start like working in groups. Finally, they can come to the board and write the cognates they found. My other example is vocabulary inquiry across languages. The students can develop the activity in both languages, draw the object and make a sentence in both languages again, or just in their home language. Students can start writing the vocabulary in Spanish, for example, platos. How do you say platos in English? Oh, dishes. So draw the picture. In what context do you use this word? Oh, cuando lavo los platos. When I wash the dishes. Okay, write the sentence. In my last example, I'm gonna use sentence building. So depending on the age of your students, you can make this straightforward or challenging. My example is for first grade students. Again, I'm going to teach students how to make a simple sentence. We will write the examples first in English and then in Spanish. It is exciting because emerging bilingual learning students are not the only ones who benefit from how English syntax works. All students gain a more robust understanding. Okay, translanguaging, or having students translate their experiences from one language into another. This strategy encourages students to dictate their experiences to you in their home languages. You can then use those accounts as texts that you and your students can translate into English. You can draw students' attention to similarities and differences between English and their home languages. So I'm going to use the same example, but this time we will focus on the differences and similarities between English and Spanish. We can use guide questions to draw our students' attention to the differences and similarities between English and Spanish. For example, we can start with the first sentence. We can ask students, what is the subject? What is the verb? It is in past or in present? Oh, it's in past. Good job. Help is in the past, and it is a regular past verb ending with ed. So how do you say helped in Spanish? Why in Spanish the predicate is different? So we read here an older woman to cross the street, but here is a cruzar la calle una señora mayor. So we can see that an older woman is after the verb. But in Spanish, an older woman is at the end of the sentence. Why? The last way to apply this strategy is to use students' stories as a scaffold for a piece of independent writing. We can use the language experience approach to help scaffold the writing process for our students. They can dictate their stories to you or another student, drawing on all of their languages. You can use the described experience as a first draft of a piece of independent writing in English. This time, students from first grade will make a storyboard about what they did in summer vacation. They will draw pictures and complete sentences, short sentences with subject, verb, complement. Simple. Finally, they will write a paragraph. So their storyboard will help them to write or make a short paragraph. Okay, so I will show you how to implement this strategy in middle and secondary grades. According to Celic and Seltzer, we can translate the students' stories from one language into another, and a student partner can take on the roles of both speakers and scribes. And we can use our students' experiences as a linguistic scaffold for a piece of independent writing. For example, I will have my EBLs listen to a short, simple story. It is in English and is in Spanish. The elves and the showmaker, los elfos y el zapatero. In this activity, students will learn how to write a synopsis by following the guide questions in Spanish and English. Then they will write the synopsis in Spanish. The teacher will have the whole class participate in making the English version. Finally, students will compare both synopses in English and Spanish. They will read it aloud in class. Students will be able to discuss the challenges of writing the synopsis in English and Spanish. So we can ask them, oh, which was more effortless and why? So here you can observe the activities, right? So they can see the differences between English and Spanish, and we are using Spanish as a vehicle to learn or for them to acquire their second language, right? Okay, thank you so much for your attention. I can't wait to see your definition in artifacts of the Translanguaging with language experience approach strategy. Thank you so much.